Hello, my name's Jane and I'm here in the beautiful grounds of the Oak House. We're not going to actually look at the house today, but we're going to look at what's going on outside the house in the 1600s. You'll see to the right of the house there is the barns. These barns were actually built in the 1700s, but there is a 1600s barn next door to them. This gives away what the house was used to be, because of course this was built as a farmhouse. So today, if you look around the Oak House, it is surrounded by modern day West Bromwich, with lots of terraced housing and semi-detached housing and other early 20th century housing. And we've just got these beautiful 2 acres of grounds here which are fantastic for our visitors. So sometimes it does look a little bit like the Oak House has actually landed here, when in fact obviously it's been here a lot longer than any other buildings on the site. So if you'd been standing here 400 years ago when John Turton lived here, what would you have been able to see? Well, it might surprise you, but we are actually on top of quite a high ridge. And 400 years ago there were virtually no trees left, to the point where the trees that built the Oak House had to be brought in from a different county. So it would have been fairly bleak. So it was heathland and it was farmland. So all around you'd have seen the Turtons fields, which would have been full of cows. We know they had cows. Would have been full of other animals, such as horses. Near to the house they'd have kept bees and chickens and pigs, and the herb garden and vegetables, and probably an orchard too with fruit in, which of course would have been cooked when they ate it. So it would have been a mixed farm with lots of fields that went all the way down to Bromford Lane and covered quite a lot of land. The Turtons were also involved in clay extraction and brick making, we believe, and tile making, and that went on site until John Turton's wealth and status grew and he decided to build some nice gardens around the back of the house. So if you'd have looked out onto the landscape instead of the terrace housing, what would you have seen? Well, as I say, you'd have seen heathland, so lots of bushes perhaps, lots of hawthorns and gorse bushes, and you'd have seen the farmland. But also down towards the river you'd have been able to see the mills that were very prevalent in this area, because farming wasn't the only thing people were doing. The farmland was not brilliant in West Bromwich, so people were also involved in industrial activities and were owning mills, which were water mills making blades and nails and other metal objects. So we know there was also lots of clay extraction. Not far away is Clay Pit Lane. So people were also involved in brick and tile making, and also because there were few trees, people were burning coal, as that was near the surface in places as well. So the landscape would have looked very different. This was not pretty rolling countryside that you might see in Herefordshire or Worcestershire. This was probably quite a harsh landscape, probably pretty chilly in the winter as we're quite high up on the ridge. And as I say, the farming, the ground was not great, the soil was not brilliant, so people were involved in lots of different activities to make their living. And of course the Turtons had their fingers in lots of pies and were therefore doing very well for themselves indeed. So we've moved now to the rear of the building, and this was John Turton's extension in the 1650s or early 1660s. And this was his gentleman's house as the family grew richer and moved up the social ranks. And it's round the back because the landscape fell away here down the hill, and you would have been able to see this posh part of the house from the main road that went to Wolverhampton. The centre of West Bromwich was actually a few miles away from here, towards where the hospital is, the main road between the hospital and the church was the centre of West Bromwich. Although it wasn't a traditional village that we might think of it, with a village green and cottages around it, it was a bit of a sprawling settlement along that road. So all in all, would you have liked to have lived in West Bromwich in the 1600s? Well, certainly the Turton family did very well for themselves around here, and very much grew in wealth and status throughout the 17th century.